Hi, this is A New Nigeria with Wale Oluwade. This is your current affairs program where we critically examine the strategic issues bedeviling Nigeria's developmental aspirations and boldly offer practical suggestions on building the Nigeria of our collective desires. Today's episode promises to be engaging and exciting. My guest is already here to assist me in doing justice and also give depth and clarity to the topic of our discourse. As always, it's going to be evidence-driven, honest, bold, and a no-holds-barred conversation. So get ready as we begin in earnest. And now, let's get on with it. Today, we're looking at nation building, how we make leaders. I have devoted much thought to how we choose leaders in Nigeria and Africa generally. But it has since occurred to me that the question first ought to be, how do we make leaders? While our leadership selection process is atrocious, the point needs to be made that this began when we consciously refused to institute a deliberate leadership development process through a structured socio-cultural and political evolutionary system. In my years of research on leading nations and their leadership, I discovered that there is a direct correlation between certain countries or societies, often termed advanced or developed, who have instituted a fastidious and enduring culture of rigorous and consistent devotion to leadership development in the sphere of politics and government, from cradle to maturity. In comparison, there are other nations euphemistically referred to as developing, where there is an obvious absence of such commitment to leadership development in politics and government. In the former nations, various socio-cultural institutions are carefully designed to nurture leadership development, and this includes educational, professional, political, civil society organizations, think tanks, and so on. Now, how has a lack of this affected our governance failures in Africa and Nigeria? In fact, do we understand that leadership is a core human strategic capability or skill that is teachable and must be learned and nurtured by persons from cradle unto maturity? How do we replicate or return to this in Nigeria? These are some of the issues we're examining today. We'll take this short break, and when we return, we'll get right into the conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. My guest is already here. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi is a professor of mass communication at the Bayes University, Abuja, and also a public affairs analyst. Good afternoon, Prof.
Good afternoon. Good to see you again.
You're welcome. Nice seeing you again.
Yeah.
Now, let's get right into our conversation. We're in the process of elections towards 2023, and elections about electing leaders to man our different political offices. Yeah. Prof, in your own opinion, what is leadership?
Leadership is the provision of inspiration, the ability to galvanize people in groups, or in association, towards the achievement of set goals and objectives, and for the improvement of the lots of the people, in their individual positioning or in their collectivities. So leadership is about galvanization, it's about the provision of inspiration, it's about providing direction, and the implementation or the execution of the directions that have been so provided. So leadership means quite a number of things, really. But above all, it just means that somebody will have to live a sacrificial life, other-centered relationship. You have to live a life that is centered around improving the lives of others. That's leadership. So leadership is sacrificial. Leadership involves a lots of things, including being able to accommodate criticisms. Sometimes that might appear bruising to your ego. Sometimes they might appear offensive to your pride. Sometimes they might appear as if they're trying to belittle you. But the prize of leadership is to have that courage of conviction to stomach them all, realizing that you are the bearer of a bigger picture. So you are the armor bearer towards the satisfaction of a collective objective. You know, that's what leadership, that's what I think leadership is all about. And the ability to do this well defines the good leader, you know, separates the good leader from the bad one. You know, sometimes you may find a middle ground when somebody is not exceptional, but at least is above average. You know, that's how I think it works.
I think that's nice enough opening remarks. Now, in your view, Prof, is leadership something that happens as a natural consequence, or it is a deliberate effort to nurture it, or develop it, or hone it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it can happen both ways, right? The first is that there are some people, some characteristics that suits the temperament of the leader. There are some characteristics that are mature, they are circumspectual, you know, they are visionary, and of course they are able to command the respect and the respect of others. Such persons, you could say, can naturally be good leaders, but it doesn't end there. You know, sometimes as well, leadership can be learned, it can be deliberate. And we have seen that in modern times, systems and societies have been working towards making leadership to be very, very deliberate through education, you know, through requisite exposure. You know, and of course, because of the importance of leadership, you know, people have realized that you cannot allow leadership to just be a question of happenstance, looking for who is better than the other in terms of the ability to provide inspiration. Deliberate efforts have been made across the world, I mean, to prepare people towards leadership position. And we have seen it around, you know, because leadership is about the provision of content. You know, you are releasing content and character. If you do not have those content and character, you know, then what then do you have to give? You know, if you don't have it, you cannot give it. It is what you have that you have to give, you know. So you have to deliberately build that content, build that character, so that you can give quality attitude. You know, you can radiate, you know, respectable reputation, a reputation that will be salutary. And that's the essence of leadership, because you have to be in a position where people will be able to look up to you, inspire them, either through, not just through your actions, not just through your words, but also your actions.
In Nigeria, you know, as with other countries, you know, of the world, we used to have some institutions that produced leaders. Barewa College in the north, in years gone by, hardly did anybody who became president or minister, you know, or governor, someone of renown, who was not a product of Barewa College. Igbobi College in Lagos, King's College in Lagos, Loyola College in Ibadan, I mean, CKC in Onitsha, a few of these, you know, institutions. And sad as it may sound, or ironical as it may sound, even the military establishment in America, for instance, the military, you know, institution plays a very key role in producing leaders. In fact, there was a time in America, you know, in the entire 20th century, if you didn't attend, if you are not a former soldier, it would be hard for you to become governor or president in America, you know, but that has since changed. Now, the question is this, Prof. How deliberate are we in establishing institutions
that will produce leaders?
That produce leaders.
Yeah, I think we're not too far from where we should be, really. We made the point earlier on that it's about content and character.
Exactly.
And we have institutions, you know,
before
across the world that are very good, that are very solid in the building, in the generation of solid characters, both in learning and character. You know, so because of the quality of those institutions, they're able to come out with people who are exemplary. And of course, they grew up to become leaders. And we have to underscore the fact that not all graduates of those schools that you will mention can actually be good leaders. But just that the majority of them turned out to be very excellent graduates, as the case could be. And of course, the military institutions too, I agree. Don't forget that the military is one organization that has discipline as a signature tune, you know. Discipline is also an important character of a good leader. Discipline, you know, precision, you know, hierarchy, respectability, respect for the one above you. You know, so they have respect for hierarchy, not necessarily respect for the ancient that we have in the traditional system. So there are professions like that you could say are respectful of senior, are respectful of wisdom, respectful of age. And because of they have very strict ethics, you could say that they probably are able to produce good leaders. So those are the qualities that leadership needs. And I think we also have to underscore the fact that sociologists have a way of defining leadership that it can come through two ways. One, ascription. Ascription is something that just happened naturally as a result of biology, accident of birth,
process.
You know, accident of birth, or maybe inheritance, you know, like traditional institutions, for instance, like the British monarchy. All the princes and princesses that we are celebrating, the queen, etc., you know, not necessarily through achievement, but ascription, through biology, accident of birth, they are natural. You know, but the other one is achievement. Those ones come through painstaking efforts, deliberate efforts. You mold yourself in a regular socialization process, and you become a leader. So those two ways are what sociologists have helped. How sociologists have helped us to characterize the emergence of leaders. Absolutely. But in our own system, we can be deliberate. Singapore was very, very deliberate in the initial, in the early years. Do not forget, Lee Kuan Yew was busy sending future leaders to some of the best universities in the world. They went to Oxford, they went to Cambridge, they were in the US as well, several of them. At a time in the United States, and at a time, statistics also show that China was busy sending future leaders, you know, to countries of the West, such that we had over 100,000 students were being sent to the US every year, and over 50 were being sent to various universities in Europe every year. And the essence was not just for nothing, for them to go learn skills in some of their best institutions and come back and lead processes and procedures, not just in political leadership, but in professional spheres as well, in engineering, in banking, you know, in agriculture, and we are beginning to see the result as the case could be.
Brilliant, brilliant. Let's take a short break. We'll take this short break, and when we return, we'll continue with our conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Prof, before we went on that short break, I liked how you tried to you know, segregate the different parts of leadership making, you know, from different jurisdictions, and you're absolutely correct. You know, I mean, the examples you gave: Saudi Arabia, that is a monarchy; the United Kingdom, though ceremonial head;
even the UAE.
Even the UAE. Yeah. But you see, whether it is ceremonial or not, take for instance King Charles. Now, he was a prince for all of his life. Yeah. He was understudying the mother, because that's another way of leadership, you know, making, mentoring, directly observing someone at close quarters, you know. So he's there now. Nobody would expect King Charles to, you know, step out of line in terms of what a king, royalty should behave. Now, specifically about Nigeria, and that is what really concerns us on this program. Like I said earlier, if you observe our political class, it seems to be most of them in political offices especially haven't the foggiest clue what leadership seriously entails. Beyond, because what I see is the razzmatazz of leadership, you know, the convoy, the ceremonial aspect of leadership, the showmanship.
Well, you know, things change. Societies evolve either for good or for ill, as the case could be.
I was going to say that.
You know, it depends.
Either they evolve, you know, progressively or regressively.
Yes, that's exactly. That's a fact, really.
Exactly.
And do not forget, we are also witnessing changes in terms of our demography. Our population is exploding over the years, and of course, you know, we haven't made deliberate effort to improve opportunities for for value adding, opportunities to add value into the content, into the character of persons, populating organizational spaces. You know, I'm not sure we have made those efforts. And do not forget, resources are also depleting. You know, oil revenue that used to be our mainstay is becoming unreliable in terms of projections on how much we're going to get from them. So matters are arising. I'm not sure we're also dealing with the question of population. Do not forget, you know, at independence, our population was almost at par with that of the United Kingdom, between 60 and 70 million, or even between 50 and 70 million, thereabout. The United Kingdom is still less than 70 million, but now we are about 220 million.
We have grown exponentially.
You know, so how do and of course, do not forget that the United Kingdom is one of the strongest economies in the world, one very strong country, influential in many respects, but our case is completely different. You know, so to that extent, you may say that because of these limited resources, the opportunities to improve on the value, to enhance the potentials of our population to perform in different sectors, you know, and sections of the population of the system might be thinning. But that is not to say that there are no silver linings. There are silver linings. We have seen flashes of good leadership. We still have institutions that are very strong, that are producing good leaders, you know, but yeah, we still have very good institutions. I don't want to mention them so that I won't look patronizing.
Okay. Primary, secondary, tertiary institutions, for instance, in the United Kingdom, in America, even in China, I mean, are the foundation for leadership making. No, so if you see what public institutions, primary, secondary, tertiary, has become here, does that give you hope, you know, that's one, does that give you hope of the future, of our ability to produce leaders? Secondly, does it not say a lot about the mindset? Because in your description or definition of leader, you had said it's someone who gives inspiration. Yeah. You know, there are different definitions of leadership.
Yeah, there are different.
It's such a deep phenomena that you cannot use one
sentence.
I
have different types.
There are different, of course, definitely.
Transformational, laissez-faire, revolutionary,
but you see,
etc.
there is a common thread that runs through every genuine leader: visionary.
Yeah.
This point I'm raising, if you look at Cambridge or Oxford, these are institutions founded 15th century, 14th century. In fact, there are 3 secondary schools in my research, founded 1560, 1440, produced 29 prime ministers in the United Kingdom. How has Britain been able to keep those institutions to remain premier, you know, institutions, public premier educational institutions? Whereas University of Ibadan, just founded 1962, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 52, if I'm not mistaken, is no longer, is a shadow of its old glory. What do you say to this, Prof?
Well, it's it can be anything, you know, but do not forget we have problems with maintenance. Our culture of maintenance is still very low, you know. Continuity is still a problem. We still have governance issues. We still have sustainability issues. We are yet to believe that government is a continuum, you know. We're also still largely self-aggrandizing in terms of how we appropriate, you know, public achievements, you know. So those things are still our weaknesses. Are still our weaknesses, yes. So I think it's something that can be dealt with, you know, if we have the appropriate policy directions propelled by the right leader. Exactly. You know, we can definitely deal with them. I also don't want to believe that these countries that you have cited just started from the sky. In the early stages, the prehistoric times, they were largely primitive until they started having some revolutionary leaders and thinkers, you know, started propelling them to the path of sustainability, to the ingraining the culture of sustenance in them. You know, before there's people who were thinking properly and ingraining the culture of sustenance, and which is why you still see very old buildings still standing strong, old buildings as old as more than 1,000 years, you know, still standing strong. And it comes back again to the question of building very solid institutions. If the institutions are right, if they are solid, the human being that walk through the institutions will be able to continue with those institutions. Maybe we have to focus on this so that we'll stop thinking, we'll stop privileging the individual above institutions in our climb. But in our own system, we still think the individual is much more important rather than the institution. We're still about individuals, and individuals also come playing on themselves, and that's why you see state governors will build public facilities and name it after themselves. You know, it's not about themselves, it's about this institution. You know, if we are more public oriented, consistent with the right definition of leadership, which is other-centered behavior. Behavior that is centered around improving the loss of others. You know, if we are conscious of these, added with missionary and visionary dispositions, I'm sure we'll get to where we want to be.
Brilliant, brilliant. This is a continuing discussion, definitely. We haven't even, scratched the surface. We're going to go into this in fuller details in subsequent editions.
No problem.
Thank you for coming, Prof.
Thanks.
Nice having you.
Thanks for having me.
And that's the end of the interview segment. We'll take this short break, and when we come back, I'll give my closing statement. Please stay with us. Welcome back, and here are my closing statements. Leadership is a strategic capability. That is, it is a unique skill like medicine, piloting, engineering, tailoring, architecture, banking, accounting, etc. Nobody just wakes up and says, I am a medical doctor. To become a fresh medical doctor, for instance, will take minimum 6 to 8 years of rigorous training. To become a senior doctor, however, will take at least 15 years total or more. To pilot a turboprop aircraft will take maybe 3 to 5 years training. But to fly a jumbo Boeing 777 or 787 aircraft, is a different matter entirely. So leadership is like medicine, piloting, tailoring, and so on. It is a strategic capability. It is a core skill or competence that is teachable and developable. Wise countries have deliberately created institutions where potential leaders are identified from childhood and prepared for future roles in government and politics. It is no accident, therefore, that these are the countries we refer to as developed or advanced economies. In the United Kingdom, for example, since Robert Walpole, who is generally regarded as the United Kingdom's first prime minister, there has been 56, heads of government, and 29 were educated at Oxford University, compared with Cambridge University, the runner-up, with 15. So Oxford and Cambridge universities alone, of the over 200 universities in the United Kingdom, have produced 43 prime ministers of the 56 overall, representing 82%. Wow, that is stunning. But let's dig deeper. 2 other universities produced 3 prime ministers each, the University of Edinburgh and the University of Glasgow, both in Scotland. The total of 6 represents approximately 11%. If you add the 6 from these 2 universities to the 43 from Oxford and Cambridge, you have just 4 universities producing a total 49 prime ministers, representing 87% of all prime ministers in the history of Britain. I might add that these are all public universities. So what is it about Oxford University to have singly produced 29 prime ministers? And how has it shaped British politics? I quote excerpts from a 2016 BBC News report as follows. Part of the reason is the world-renowned Oxford Union Debating Society. People learn that if you come to Oxford and perform well in the union, you make the contacts and you will get into politics, says Professor Geoffrey Evans of Oxford Northfield College. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it continues. Harrison Edmonds, the current president of the Oxford University Conservative Association, says the union's debating style is, and I quote, focused very much on the British House of Commons. I think there's an explicit link with the idea that the Oxford Union is the place where these parliamentarians of the future cut their teeth and learn how to debate. He says, leadership training and development process at university level, exploring further into much earlier preparation. The research reveals further that out of the UK's 56 prime ministers, 19 of them went to Eton College, established in 1440. Now, besides Eton College, you also have Harrow School, founded 1572, which has produced 8 prime ministers, while Westminster School, another secondary school, has 2 prime ministers. So you have these 3 secondary schools producing almost half of all British prime ministers. Now, what does the foregoing statistics about British prime ministers and leadership training and development reveal? Number 1, that the architect of British society adopted a deliberate policy of preparing leaders for governments and politics. Number 2, that they didn't just start grooming leaders at university. The leadership development process actually begins from secondary school or high school. Number 3, There is no room for accidental leadership or anyone with a sense of entitlement. When you finish from university, you have to get elected into parliament and hone your leadership skills there further from the back benches and Nigeria specifically. Just take a cursory look at the Nigerian socio-economic and political landscape. What it reveals is a nation that is poorly governed by an egregiously incompetent and woeful leadership. Most of these are leaders occupying strategic government positions haven't the foggiest clues what governance is all about. Therefore, the conversation about making a new Nigeria must, at its foundation, begin with where are our leadership-making institutions. We shall explore this further in subsequent episodes. Remember, change requires action, and positive change requires positive action. I believe in a new Nigeria, and it is possible. And those are my closing thoughts. Now, that's the program today. Remember to follow me on my different social media handles. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can watch this video and others there at your convenience. Drop your comments also. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.